This is how we do it. This is how we do it. This is how we do it. G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza and today I'm going to spookify something for Halloween. Today's video was recorded in stream on Adobe's Twitch channel. Make sure to check out twitch.tv/Adobe for loads of awesome streamers. They stream all the time, loads of awesome different stuff, traditional, digital, animation, art, you name it. And today in Photoshop, I'm going to be taking something, probably something cute and cartoony or whatever, and making a spooky Halloween version of it. This should be loads of fun, but I don't actually know what I'm going to spookify yet, so I'm going to leave it to the Twitch chat to leave their suggestions and they will vote on what I will spookify. I put it to a vote. There was about 10 different dudes to pick from, and in the end I did a final voting poll of the top 3 options, and the winner at 42% is Princess Peach. This is my reference. I'm just going to put her on the side, and now I'm going to go ahead and spookify Princess Peach. Start off with a basic construction for the proportions and pose. I tried to really follow the original reference as far as proportions and style goes, so I kept that cutesy cartoony look, but I wanted to make it feel a bit off and a little bit unsettling. So I went with a slightly tilted head, and I have her left hand holding up a head, which will end up being Mario's severed head, and in her right hand I'll end up drawing a weapon, which at the time I actually didn't know what to draw as a weapon because the chat was giving a lot of suggestions, so I'll get back to that later. But that being said, once the pose was something I was happy with, I started to outline and refine the details of the piece. I wanted to, of course, make it that little bit more unsettling though, so I made sure her clothes were a bit torn and her hair a little bit messed up. Mario's severed head having, of course, a shocked expression, and starting, of course, to define a little bit of the gore in the image as well. Some dripping blood and the bloody stump of the neck. I'm liking how my Princess Peach is looking, definitely pretty creepy. The Twitch chat is having a bit of a conflict as to what her weapon should be. So I'm actually going to put it to a vote because I can't decide for myself, as usual. So I've put it in the hands of the Twitch chat. The options are knife, axe, parasol, butcher's cleaver, biting plant, and star wand. And the votes are rolling in. And having won by a landslide, Princess Peach's weapon is going to be a parasol. So in light of that, I'm actually going to get rid of her right arm and I'm going to redraw it holding the parasol sort of leaning up against her shoulder, and I think the end of the parasol, the handle bit, will be somehow incorporated with the weapon. Anyways, once I've drawn that in and I've got my sketch that I'm happy with, I'm going to jump into doing the line work and the color. Now knowing what the weapon will be, I removed the basic construction of the right hand and drew it holding a parasol. Now I actually looked up references of her parasol and she has a bit of a love heart shaped handle, so I did an extra Twitch poll to see how she might have used the parasol as a weapon, and in the end we ended up using that love heart shape as a blade. Now moving forward with the line work, I'm using her original line work color, which is sort of like a rich maroon color that complements her yellows and pinks, to maintain the look that carries across between the two of them, so that it doesn't look like it would be a huge jump for the original Princess Peach character to turn into the character that I'm drawing here, which makes it a little bit more believable and a little bit more freaky. I'm keeping my lines really clean and complementing that cartoony look, which will then end up juxtaposed by violence and gore that I'll add later, especially when I get to the color and textures. The lines are drawn with my custom brushes. In particular, there are brush pen brushes that I have as part of the set, and then later when I get to the color, I'll also be using my custom brushes to add some paint and texture for blood and other things like that. I highly recommend, if you're interested, checking out my custom Photoshop brushes for Photoshop CS 5.5 and above. I use them for literally all of my Photoshop work, and I can't recommend enough personally because, I mean, they're all I use, but I did make them in the end for myself and my own personal use. So everyone has their own different workflows, and these are brushes that I've created to really complement my own. Moving on to the colors, again, I'm using the original colors as my reference with the exception of her eyes and the gems, keeping them all a little bit more unsettling. So rather than having blue gems, I've kept them all blood red, and her eyes I start off in a yellow, which later on I actually come back and change. Everything for now though is very clean without much gore or grit, but it's in the next stages that I'm going to really add a much more grotesque look. So I finished adding the color. Now, as you can see, it still has an air of bright cheerfulness because I've used the original Princess Peach colors as a base to work from, but here's where we have a bit more fun. I'm actually going to take my entire illustration layer and I am going to convert it to a smart object. I have a keyboard shortcut set up to do that, which I made Control-1, but essentially that just merges all of the layers into one that you can go back into later and make changes if you want. It also means any changes you apply to that layer, manipulations or filters, things like that, aren't applied to the actual bitmapped imagery itself. It's just applied to the smart object, which you can break apart or bring back from the changes you make. So it's a really nice safety net. Now, the reason I say all that is because now when I go into image adjustments and go into hue saturation, I can bring down the saturation of my Princess Peach character, and you can see that we have a little bit more of a grim look to her. You can also change the hue on either side, and I'm going to pull it to the right until it's maybe +2. Then I have a slightly weird looking Princess Peach. I'm going to go into adjustments, brightness, contrast, and I'm going to add some contrast. Once again, the saturation's still a little strong, but the cool thing is you can see under your smart object here, you have these layers here. So I'm going to double click on my hue saturation and then bring it down even further, hit OK, and then with it all applied, we're starting to get a pretty nifty look. Now we're going to have a lot of fun and make it really gritty. I'm going to add a new layer and add a clipping mask, which happens when you alt click between those two layers. You essentially can turn it into something where you can draw anywhere and it will only paint inside that object. I'm going to select a textured brush, my paint brush, and find a really nice dark red color and turn the whole layer into about an 80% opacity. What happens now when I paint is I get this sort of a look. It goes on top of the lines and on top of the colors, but it doesn't go over the edges. Now I'm going to play around with my blend modes and find one that looks nice and bloody. So this one's looking pretty good. I might even bring the color down a little bit. So I have an approach to adding blood to our character using my textured brush. And I'm going to be pretty brutal with this. I'm not going to hold back. I'm just going to put lots and lots of blood, this hand in particular. I'm going to bring my brush size up and sort of tap it out as we start to gradient towards there being no blood. And that creates a bit more of a spattery look. And I'm going to go in even larger brush size and just do this spatter elsewhere on the dress just to add a nice bit of grit. Now, of course, we need to not forget Mario has had his head cut off, so I'm going to have to make it nice and gruesome here. So things most close to the Mario head make sense, so the side of the dress here. And then we're also going to add a whole bunch of red to our parasol. Always nice to keep the hands really bloody. Now, I'm not 100% with her colors, but the cool thing is I can make changes pretty easily. I can just double click and go into the smart object. As you can see, everything is exactly as it originally was. Now, it's the hair and the eyes I'm not 100% happy with, so I'm just going to try and find my hair and eyes layer. So with the hair selected, I'm going to paste that, and I have a duplicate that I can adjust. Okay, I'm happy with that. That's got a bit more of a blonde look. And then the eyes themselves, these yellow eyes, again, I'm not 100% happy with. So I'm actually going to go in here and just adjust the color. An easy way to do this is to simply paint a color you want to try on a layer over the area you want to change, like that. And then just try your blend modes until you hit transition into that color that works nicely. So hue does that well, and now I'm just going to try my hue saturation and just adjust the hue into different colors until I find something I'm happy with. So I'm going to hit OK, save, and now when I go back to my other picture, I'm happier with this. So we're getting somewhere, we're nearly there, we're doing really well, but there are some final adjustments and additions I want to make. Now, one of my favorite things to do when working with gruesome images like this is to work with textures. So these are a bunch of blood textures that I have. So I'm actually going to select some of these and drag them into my image. You can see when applied to the clipping mask, again, they're sort of applied only to that area, which is really cool. So only to that area in the object. Again, I can go through the blend modes and then find one that works really well with the character. I think in general, multiply works well, and I can bring the opacity down. And if there's any areas that are a bit too much or that I want to get rid of, I can just rasterize it and then just simply crop and then just delete. And I like to do this incrementally, bit by bit, adding blood spatters. Layer by layer, I add my blood spats. I ended up in the end adding about 5 or 6 extra blood splats. But of course I refine them so they're not too over the top or overwhelming, and so that they sit in different areas, and I of course rasterize and tailor them as I need them. And then I go back to my rich dark red and add a little bit more saturation to a few areas. And that's about it. I'm happy with that. We definitely have a lot of gore here, but it also does look a little bit flat because it's all just sort of part of the image. So my finishing touch is to grab a nice rich red color. I've got a detail brush that I'm going to use, and I'm going to start to add those drips that I created initially. And this kind of helps bring the gore outside of the image a little bit, so we have some more dimension to it and it feels less flat. My favorite way of doing this sort of thing is you start off by finding the areas that are dipping down that gravity would have the blood gather, sort of like this. Then outline usually 1 or 2 main ones that start to hang out. They sort of taper in towards the bottom there, and then they get heavier at a drop of blood at the bottom. Another thing I really like to do is also have some interconnected. So if I have some blood starting to hang down here, I also like to have it look a little bit sticky and wet by connecting this to sort of like another drop area over here. It's always nice, of course, to have a drop or two just sort of hanging or dropping on its own like that. And then once you've drawn the core blood dripping areas, on a layer on top of that, you can select a much lighter red, almost pink. In fact, you can go almost white with this. Just add little highlights to make it look nice and wet. Really little just dots, really. It's good to not just do this on the blood that's dripping. It's also good to find areas where the blood has gathered or is saturating objects. For example, we have the Mario character here, so his mouth will probably be nice and shiny, the edge of his head. And this is where we just make it all look nice and wet and a bit gross. And just with those simple additions, you can see that now it looks nice and wet. There's one last thing I want to do, and that is give him a kiss. So I'm going to go in here, select an image from Google Images of a kiss mark. I'm going to drag my kiss onto the stage, bring this down to size, and whack it on Mario's nose. I'll skew it to shape. It's a bit hard to see with all the blood in his face, but there's not much I can really do about that. I might maybe make it a bit smaller because her mouth is quite small. And then we have the finished result. This is my creepified Princess Peach. She looks pretty creepy to me. I definitely wouldn't want to walk across that in a dark alley in the Mushroom Kingdom. Thanks so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure, of course, to check out Adobe's Twitch channel to see their other amazing streamers. They stream all the time, so if you enjoy watching art content while you work or while you do things, or just enjoy interacting with the community, it's a really great place to check out. I highly recommend it, and they even put up with me doing grotesque and immature stuff like this. Like and subscribe if you haven't. That's it for now, ladies and gentlemen, and until next time, I'll see you later. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to my channel for new content every week. If you want to support my work and get some goodies for yourself, head over to my store for archives, ebooks, digital brushes, video courses, and more. If you enjoyed this video, here's a link to another video you might like from this channel. And if you want even more, make sure to check out all my behind the scenes action on my vlog channel, Daily Jazza. Draw with Jazza is proudly sponsored by Adobe. Join the Creative Cloud today and get loads of incredible creative tools like Photoshop, Animate, Premiere Pro, and other apps for your computer or mobile device. That's it for now. Thanks for joining the arty party, and until next time, I'll see you later.